Hello! Welcome to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Dorothy, and I serve as the youth director at the Chinese Bible Church of Maryland in Rockville, Maryland of the DC Metropolitan. Joining me today are two good friends, pastors, colleagues, and brothers in the faith. And to start us off, and so that our hearers know a little bit more about you, what is one factor that comes to mind when deciding on whether or not to attend a ministry conference? Terrence, how about we start with you?
Wow, starting with me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Terrence Shea. I'm the family pastor at First Chinese Baptist Church of Walnuts. We are in Southern California in the LA region, little tiny little town with a lot of Asians. I've been here now, this starting almost getting to my 10th year, so it's been a little bit, but in many ways, I feel like I'm just getting started. I have three kids of my own, middle school, high school, and college. And so school year is just upon us, and it's an exciting and busy time. What do I look for in a conference? Well, I feel like it's changed over time, but to keep it short, I look for there being a presence of relationship and networking opportunities. And that's not to say that the content itself isn't worth it or that there isn't something that we still need to learn and grow in. But I feel like, especially with podcasts being really prevalent and lots of resources being at your fingertips, that it's an opportunity to meet and connect with people that I value the most. So that even I think will drive into what we're going to talk about today, but that's something I look for.
Okay. How about you, Huey?
Hello, everyone. Good to be here with you. My name is Huey, and I currently serve as the worship and young adults pastor at my church in Centerville, Virginia. It's called Christ Central Presbyterian Church. But prior to that, I've been in and around youth ministries for about 18 years. I have my two older sons are in youth ministry now, so I am just as invested and engaged and passionate about youth ministry as I've been in the past. So it's good to spend this time with you. Yeah, a couple factors come to mind. Um, uh, the city that the conference is in, does it have in and out? Okay, that's one thing I
Yes,
consider.
sir.
That's valid.
Um, but more on a more serious note, I think about the size of the conference. To me, I prefer, just my preference is conferences that are a bit smaller in size, maybe in the hundreds. I've been to conferences like TGC, for example. There are thousands of people. It's just a little bit overwhelming. And I totally agree with Terrence. Just the opportunity to connect with people while you're there. Those kinds of opportunities. And then, in my experience, just the smaller the conference, the more opportunities you get to like actually connect with people and meet people. So yeah, that's what I kind of look at when I think about conferences.
Awesome, awesome. In general, asking that question is one where we are gearing up for the Rooted conference to come up later in the month of October. And I guess I can answer the question as well to say one thing that comes to mind on deciding whether or not to attend a ministry conference is there any lodging? Because I'm not much of an Airbnb girl because it's just so much more convenient to go into a hotel and not have to think about cleanup or any other arrival or exit procedures. So when I was looking for lodging for the Gospel Coalition Women's Conference in 2024, I booked maybe around Christmas time, and most of the hotels within like a quarter-mile radius were already all booked. So I'm like, oh no. And the closest one I found was within like a half mile. So just imagining walking a half mile in the morning of a hot summer day, I'm like, is conference better be worth it? And it was. So, anyways,
There you go.
lodging is very important, yes. But this month, we are gearing up for the Rooted Conference to come up in the suburb of Chicago, which is Lake Forest. It's in the north suburb of Chicago. And as we near that conference, we share with our hearers, listeners, the ways in which we've been personally blessed through previous conferences, which have compelled and propelled us to get more involved with the Rooted organization as it is. So let's start off with this question of how many Rooted conferences have you attended prior, and what keeps you coming back? Huey, why don't you start us off with that?
Sure. I've been four rooted conferences in the past.
Okay.
And just to be very honest, I've loved every single one of them. And
Nice.
a couple things that keeps me going back. Number one, I really do feel like Rooted is very, very intentional about fostering relationships within the conference. So one of the things that I thought was really great and brilliant was when Rooted hosted these dine outs in throughout the conference. So, dinners are usually on your own, but they kind of group people together to go out to dinner together. So you can just kind of sign up to, just to like meet new people. So I remember going to my first Rooted conference by myself, and dine outs was really helpful just because like so that you don't have to eat by yourself or whatnot. There's already a space that's created for you to so that you can meet people. So I do really feel like Rooted is very intentional about not just information stuff, but creating spaces for you to connect with people, with the leaders of Rooted as well. So that's one thing I appreciate. And the second thing I appreciate is just how focused they are in terms of their content. It is a youth ministry specific, and this year is actually a little bit broader. It's next gen conference, and I love that. It's very focused, very they have a direction, they have a goal, and it's something it's very helpful in terms of what you want to get out of you're going with an intention to learn something very specific about where you are in ministry. So those two things come to mind for me.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. I think those dine arounds were even helpful for me too when I first got introduced with Rooted, and that's where I met Terrence. So, Terrence, how about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I know. Fortunately, I'm able to remember how many rooted conferences I've been to because my very first one was in 2021. So really, I'm just counting with my fingers, and I've been to four, just like Huey.
That's
Yeah, so that very first one in Birmingham, it definitely was something that God really used to help me to become more familiar with Rooted as an organization. But then, right away you get to meet some people. Like you read what people write, you view and watch the content of what is produced through Rooted. But then when you're at the conference, you're literally just walking amongst everybody as ordinary as it is. So it's wonderful. So you're kind of right on the ground. You're brought in there. You're connected into the ministry through the conference. And that's probably the first thing I would say is something that I really appreciate and enjoy the most because I've always followed Rooted from a distance. So I followed it from the perspective of just, getting good content from blogs, having things to think about and pass on to parents and youth leaders and even the youth themselves. So that's great. I mean, you want to be able to pass on something that is helpful for them that people are able to study and think about, reflect, and pray over and apply. But it's another thing to actually meet the authors and also meet the contributors to that content to be able to then experience the culture. So I've enjoyed that about each Reader conference. And I do feel like with every conference, there's a little bit of a mix of people in some ways. And also because of the changes in location and venue, there's a lot of character that comes out of just being in a particular place. And this year, I'm sure Dorothy will get there. We are going to be in Chicago.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so we got to hear more about that. And that's indeed where I met Dorothy at my very first Rooted. We met through there and we got connected through the pre-conference, which we can talk about later as well. And so that was really wonderful to be able to share that experience and starting point together.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I still remember. Actually, for all of us, then we've been to four Rooted conferences and started in 2021, right, shortly after COVID. So here we go, here we go. Now this year's gonna be the big five. And wow, it's been that long. So I've attended four, just like the rest of my brothers here. And what keeps me coming back really is the friendship. I think that maybe I've said this in a prior podcast, but it's so true. And I don't know whoever thought it wasn't true that pastors need friends too. And the thing is, as much as you might find some semblance of community where you are as a minister or a ministry practitioner, not a lot of people in your immediate geographic vicinity may understand the ins and outs and the complexities and nuances of being in full-time ministry, or at least being deeper involved in ministry and leadership in the adjacents. So it's really the friendships that are developed, the camaraderie and the networking that you can do. But of course, like even if you're trying to look for your next retreat speaker, I think more importantly is it's a really deep comfort to meet people at the conference who get it.
Hmm.
And you can empathize more than just sympathize. And on a lighter note, you can feed your coffee or tea addiction and no one would judge you because they have it too. They got it bad, real bad. So,
It's sanctioned. It's official.
and it's also like super comforting that there's so much coffee around the clock. So thank you, Brashler. We appreciate you so much if you're listening.
Hey, friends, if you've been walking with us here on this Rooted podcast, you already know our heart: Bible saturated, gospel centered ministry rooted in deep relationships. So, we want to make sure you know about something that's at the very core of what we do: the Rooted Conference. Every fall, we gather youth, children, and family ministry leaders from around the country for a time of encouragement, equipping, and connection. It's just the gospel, great teaching, and real conversations with people who get what it's like to be in the trenches of next gen ministry. This year, we're diving into the church in the book of Acts, and we'll explore how the early church speaks to the pressures facing today's teenagers and families, especially the weight of radical individualism. We'll be in Chicago October 23rd through 25th, and we would love to see you there. So, whether you're a longtime part of the Rooted family or just starting the journey, come join us. Let's learn together and walk forward in hope for the next generation. Register today at rootedministry.com.
So, if you've never been to a Rooted conference, though, and you're hearing about it or you've heard too much about it and you're like, you know what, maybe I just need to check it out and ask for budget first. But to my brothers, once again, what makes the Rooted Conference distinct from other ministry equipping and training spaces? Because there's so many different varieties of ministry conferences for our Asian American brothers and sisters. There's the AALC, or the Asian American Leadership Conference. There may be a whole slew of other youth ministry conferences. I know there's another one coming up with the Asian American Christian Collaborative, and there's the more ethnic specific spaces as well. So, can you tell us a little bit more, fellas, on what makes the Rooted Conference distinct or different from other ministry equipping and training spaces? Terrence, how about we start with you this time?
Yeah, earlier Huey had talked about like the size of conference being important,
Hmm.
but that's something that's meaningful when it comes to Rooted as well, because Rooted, even though there are a lot of people there, it never feels like you would lose yourself in this cavernous space where you're just like a number. And it's not to say that the larger conferences don't make their effort, to involve every person or to reach every person, but really when you step into Rooted, you see the lineup, you see the speakers, you're like, oh wow, these are pretty quality speakers. These are authors and writers that, we're familiar with or we read or are caught up on. But yet when you get there on the ground, it's almost like we're a large congregation. Like there's a feeling of you're kind of just with your church family on a Sunday, or you're attending and worshiping, receiving preaching and teaching and praying and responding as a part of this extended family in terms of the feel. So I like that a lot, because sometimes, you go to enough conferences and it's almost like you have to make that difficult choice of, okay, well, if I go to this maybe, local, less familiar conference, maybe, I don't know what I would get from there, how I might be sharpened or grow from there, or what would be presented, or, is it going to be something I really need? But if you go to a super large one where you know that the production value is high and the speakers are, really quality and excellent, but you're like, wait, but am I just going to feel like I'm in person for like a Zoom call? I'm just there to watch a seminar or a webinar every single time. And I could actually do this at home where I'm paying much more attention and I could take notes and I could interact. So Rooted is really that really wonderful blend of where, they go out front, to try to get pretty quality speakers and teachers, people that are practitioners and experienced, but then you're participating in it just in the room, personally being reached and helped by it. And so I like that a lot. It's different than a lot of conferences I've been to.
It's good.
I mean, I think if I could bring a summation to what you just said is there's such a priority on relationships versus just attendance.
Hmm.
And you're right in that you could just find any other YouTube or dare I say, Pure Flix, just kidding, sermon, sermon or any other video to quote unquote get fed virtually. But that's not the same as being in the flesh with other people, especially people you don't know. But then the greatest commonality that you have, aside from, Jesus and the gospel, is co-laboring in ministry, despite being of different ministries. And so you're right. It is, as Huey said even earlier, a super intentional, deliberate space that has been created for those who are there. And I would like to say, hopefully, there is something for everyone. Yeah. How about you, Brother Huey?
I really appreciate that there is an space for Asian Americans specifically. I feel like Rooted has been always very intentional about um, bringing Asian Americans to the table, giving us a space to, even have our own pre-conference, which we'll talk about in our next episode. And I feel like it's a it's a place that Asian Americans can find belonging and find community. Like we feel welcome. And I'm not saying that we're not welcome in other spaces, but the fact that there is an Asian American steering community that all of us are a part of. And we continue to meet together throughout the year. Like so I just feel like there's intentionality in creating space for us. And Rooted has become one of the very few spaces where I feel like I can bring my youth ministry team. So the last few years, I brought volunteers from our youth ministry team with me to those conferences, and we've bonded through that time. We're in ministry together, so learning the same things, being equipped to go back to our church to serve better. That's been really rewarding for us. There's a lot of return on investment, for the group of us that went the last few years. So that's been really, really, really helpful and encouraging for us. Yeah.
This is kind of a tangential question, but when you're talking about trying to get your staff to go to Rooted, is there like a budget that you guys have for how many conferences you're actually allowed to attend?
Yeah, I budget in one conference.
Okay.
I have a team of like 20 something people.
Oh my Lord.
I can't take everybody.
I mean, you could.
So I budget for at least like 4 to 6 people
Yeah.
to go to the conference. Yeah, we cover their flight and their lodging and meals, and all they're responsible for is their registration fee. So
Okay.
if they're willing to cover that, then the church kind of covers the rest, and we try to go together as a team.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Terrence, is the same for you too?
I mean, for us as staff, we have some budget to work with for conferences.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh.
and then we would have to budget for the volunteers and the workers that we want to bring with us for anything that we plan for as well. But it's something that is negotiable and something that we could, try to include in our budgets as we go. So like there's something kind of set apart now, but we don't have like a specific conference that we're committed to always bring our volunteers.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially for those who may be parents of young children, it can, I'm going to quote Huey on this from a prior conversation, it can feel like a luxury to be able to travel for ministry conferences at all.
Yeah.
So yes, budgeting is super important, but also even if you had the budget, sometimes you just can't step away from the pulpit or from your family, other responsibilities. So I would like to say or to think that Rooted is of an appropriate amount of time for a conference because it spans from like Thursday, if you attend the pre-conference, Thursday latter morning up until noon of that Saturday, right? So having like almost just about 2 full days for a conference with a very, very appropriate amount of break room or breathing room. I think a lot of other conferences may span like 3 days. And so if you travel coming in early or leaving later, sometimes flights can be tricky. But with that all being said, like even if you might have the resources, you might not have the time. Even if you have the time, you might not have the resources. But all in all to say, I think I agree with both of you so much. And I'm not just saying this because we're on a Rooted, branded podcast, but being part of Rooted, even just for these few years, really was the result of having attended a conference and being more curious and interested, but also being approached. I think there is a lot to say that Rooted has taken initiative with Asian American ministry and investing in those who want to be invested in the ministry too, right?
Yeah.
As we move a little farther along, I did want to ask too. I'm looking at a spread of these workshops because maybe for some of our folks who are on the fence or they've already registered for Rooted, but they're thinking like, I'm just taking it one day at a time. I don't want to think that far ahead. But humor me for a moment. There's a lot of different workshops, and they are spanning from, adhering to youth ministry for parents in particular. And now there's a larger scope of looking into children and family ministry. So, brothers, if you are able to look at the list of the workshops, are there any that you may recommend which already come to mind?
Well, I think we're all thinking of like the one that we want to recommend, and it might be the same one. But I just really want to, encourage any of you that attend to check out Justin Wong's workshop. He's a seasoned youth pastor, been in the Asian American context for decades. And he's going to talk about something that maybe you think in a Rooted conference, which can be viewed as a parachurch conference, maybe a little out of place, but it's not. He's going to talk about the priority of youth ministry being connected to the church. And so I think that's where even, as pastors and people on staff, we're like, hey, this is actually what makes for good partnership. It's not like, okay, it's Rooted or your church, or, you're with them or you're with us. We're actually, doing our part to make sure that youth ministry that is, anchored in a great commission and disciple making is going to always come back to the local church, which, by the way, is also the theme for this year as well in Acts. So I definitely recommend Justin as a workshop that you should attend.
For sure, for sure. Do we know this, Justin? Oh, yes. Yes, he is one of our podcast co-hosts, just not right now.
my.
And he's a doctor.
Yeah, doctor 2 times.
Like,
Yep.
he's a doctor,
Double doctor.
Justin Wong.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Now,
Go for
I think for me, I want to recommend another doctor, Dr. Clark Foes.
Ooh,
Is
solid.
But I love the title of his workshop, The Evangelistic Necessity of Youth Ministry. And you guys can go online on Rooted Ministry to get an idea of the description. But this idea that youth ministry more than ever, maybe perhaps there is a need for us to be evangelistic in the way that we do ministry, because um, we come across so many unchurched and dechurched, and so many Gen Alphas and Gen Zers that are open. They're asking good questions. They're asking very honest questions, and I feel like it'll be worthwhile for us to um, really consider what would it look like for our youth ministries to lean into shaping our youth ministry and our culture in such a way that we are welcoming sort of the outsiders, or the unchurched or the dechurched, because I think more and more, I think our youth ministry will be a space where we can actually like proclaim the good news of Jesus in such a way that the lost will be found, right? The broken will come to belonging in a family, so I love that. And I love that Clark has been thinking about this and studying this for the last several years, and I think he's really good, such a good person to speak on this in terms of youth ministry. So I'm actually really excited for that one.
You are, but then
I am, and I hope to listen to it when
sorry,
You know what? This
was
is the most,
exposing you, Huey. Unfortunately, our hearers will not be able to meet Huey in person this time.
Oh,
But
I was gonna say this is the most love that I have ever heard come out of Huey's mouth for Clark. I mean, if this is like not like Valentine's Day or something, I don't know what it is. Like, when is this episode coming out? I feel like it's
it just stays here. Make sure we
oh
this podcast to Clark. Okay.
oh shoot. Okay. Keep that
We're
to
gonna block
ourselves.
Clark on the share.
Yeah.
Hey, Rated family, if you're listening to this podcast, then chances are you're someone who cares deeply about discipling the next generation. Whether you're a youth pastor, volunteer, or a parent in the thick of raising kids, we've got resources designed just for you. At Rooted, we've created curriculum and courses to equip you to walk alongside children and teenagers with confidence, clarity, and the gospel at the center. For youth ministers, we offer inductive Bible studies that keep Jesus front and center in every lesson. With 10 options for year-long studies on books of the Bible, 5 shorter topical studies, and a full scope and sequence, you can map out an entire discipleship plan for students in grades 6 through 12. If you don't know where to start, download our free scope and sequence guide. And we haven't forgotten our parents. Our family discipleship video courses are designed to equip moms and dads from birth through high school, covering everything from basic parenting principles to discipling teens. Use them in small groups, Sunday school, or at home. Whether you're leading from the pulpit or around the dinner table, Rooted's resources are here to support you every step of the way. Head to rootedministry.com and click on Curriculum and Courses to explore more and download your free resources today.
Well, all in all to say, right, I think that, well, for one, Huey, we will miss you because you're not able to make the conference, but it's a great endorsement and we appreciate your insights as well as from Terrence. One more shameless plug of a workshop, which there are so many different titles and options. I think, like I said earlier, I think there can be one nugget as of wisdom or of encouragement or something to think about and take away to take home for anyone. One other one that is going to be even more pertinent, right, is led by our fearless leader and his wife, Dr. Danny Kwan and his wife, Dr. Monica. And so they're going to be teaching one about, the title is Teenagers and Mental Health for the Church and Youth Ministry. So these are both very seasoned persons in youth ministry and in the mental health realm. And together they're going to express and share very practical perspectives and tips and insights on how churches and their youth ministries can walk with teenagers, right, and their families by facilitating partnerships to care, to connect, provide resources, and also to better serve these families who are struggling. As it is, the church, we've often heard, but sometimes not necessarily seen, should be a hospital, not a trophy case. And so I think there is a lot that can be said about being real, not just with our struggles, but also being real with one another, because if we're lying to each other, then we're probably lying to God. And needless again to say, there's so many different options for you to pick up on the opportunities of workshops and attending them. You don't have to attend them all, although it might feel like you want to. But
Yeah, there's 20 workshops,
I
Dorothy.
know,
I can't believe
seriously.
it. There's so many.
Let me just get my, Harry Potter time turner, and then we'll make it happen. Anyways, humor me for Harry Potter joke there. But they will be all recorded, and if you have a Rooted account, then you can be able to tap into that later on and revisit or listen back to the ones that you would have wanted to hear but couldn't attend in person. Maybe a last question for us as we're kind of wrapping up our time together is there are probably going to be some first timers going to the Rooted conference and they really don't know what to expect, or maybe they feel a little apprehensive. So, what are some encouragements or reassurances you might have for those first time Rooted conference goers? Huey, how about you?
I would say go with an expectation for God to fill your soul. I remember going to my first Rooted conference, and I went with the intention of learning, sort of the ins and outs of youth ministry and walking away with some tools to, to help our youth ministry grow. Man, especially through the main sessions, I really felt like my soul was fed. The Rooted is there to care for the youth workers and youth pastors and youth leaders and directors, and to really encourage us who are in the trenches of ministry. So you're not just going there to like bring stuff back so that you can be a better leader. Your soul is going to get fed. through the preaching of God's word and through such the gospel centeredness of the conference. So
Mm,
look forward to that, especially if you are in a season where if you are weary and discouraged, and yeah, you don't know how much longer you can do this. Rooted will feed your soul,
mm,
so I appreciate that very much. If at all possible, go with a group of friends or volunteers that serve alongside you. I really, again, I think that will be so rewarding. But if you are going to go by yourself, go to the dine arounds. That's where you can get the conference is going to feel smaller to you in those moments. So
mm.
I would really highly recommend that.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. How about you, Terrence?
Yeah. I think for a lot of us, when we go to these kind of conferences, we're going with a lot on our plates as well, like back home, whether it's ministry wise or maybe in our own families. A lot of times I find that it's during these seasons where it almost seems very inconvenient to have a conference right now. It's like I can see what's coming up on the weekend. I can see what's going on in my home life, or maybe, some kind of crisis that just surfaced a week before. It just seems like the worst time to be away. It's the worst time to be unavailable. It's the worst time, to have to be distracted or maybe divided. But I've also found, and this is just from personal experience, I found that it's actually almost always during these particular seasons when you wouldn't plan a conference, that's exactly when and how God is meeting you, because you need that time. You need that encouragement. You need that feeding. You need to be reminded that without God, we can do nothing. And ultimately, his work and presence in your life is going to be what allows you to even be faithful and be fruitful in his time anyway. So as much as you can, even if you have a lot going on and maybe you're distracted and getting texts left and right at the conference, try to be present. Try to be there to engage. Try to be there and set aside the sessions that you're going to be in or the conversations you're going to be in as much as possible. Now, certainly the schedule is not like, legalistic, like you have to go to every single thing. So you make wise choices. But when you're there, be there. And then when you need to take care of things, then go ahead and do that. And I found that, oftentimes what is said or what is shared, or even the encouragements and the prayers that I receive in a particular context in a conference, is exactly how God is answering my prayers, feeding my soul, and allowing me to return, trusting that he is at work and that I'm not needed, but that I have the privilege to be able to come alongside in my context to make disciples back at home. So just be present as much as possible where you're at during the conference.
Mm, good.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I'll add a little bit to that in conjunction with both of what you've said is I'm thinking back to my first conference in 2021, where, I mean, it was all of our first conference, really. But I remember, Huey, you pulled up with a lot of your church staff. Terrence, you came with another of your church staff. And then I came with one other of my church staff. But at the same time, like, even if you went with someone who you knew, I think it can also sometimes be tempting to just become insular and stay with
Mm,
that little confinement of the people that you know. It was really uncomfortable for me to go to the diner rounds. However, it was uncomfortable because I didn't know anyone, but then it was a space that was more navigable to have conversation, to meet other friends, to develop more a relationship as well as just again expression of empathy for what other youth ministers or likewise have gone through. But it actually was the Asian American pre-conference where I met all y'all. And now look at us, Betsy. Just
nice.
kidding.
Wow.
All these us brothers and sisters in the faith that the pre-conference, the Asian American pre-conference was honestly, if I can say somewhat casually or jokingly, but still with serious intent, it was it was a way for me to identify who are my other Asian brothers and sisters at the conference because I want to hang out with you for the weekend. um, but in all, right, to say it's important to really seek out some of those smaller spaces to develop some of those connections and friendships and maybe someone that you ate dinner with or lunch with just once, you see them at another session or workshop and you end up staying in touch or you end up meeting again at the next Rooted conference or other conference. And start small, but I think there's definitely going to be something for you at the conference. If not, we would be happy to meet you officially.
Yeah, now you know us.
Yeah, you know us, at least by our voices, maybe not by our faces, but if you're then on the fence of still signing up for Rooted, or you're just apprehensive, sign up and also look into the Asian American pre-conference. There's also another pre-conference, but we will talk about that in our next episode. So with that, thank you so much, Huey and Terrence, for sharing your wisdom and for your care. And also to our listeners as well for your patience with us, because sometimes we get a little goofy. But we're so glad that you've joined us for the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable podcast. We look forward to the next time that we chat. And until then, may the Lord bless you and keep you as we trust in the death and resurrection of Christ to transform our homes and our churches. To find out more about the conference and register, you can go to the Rooted website. It's like rootedministry.com/conference in my home state of Illinois. But please go to the website, register, or learn more about the conference if you've already signed up, and click that conference button, right? So be sure to follow us on this podcast or on Apple Podcast or Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at The Rooted Ministry. So we hope to see you in Lake Forest, and we will talk to you soon. Be blessed, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, bye, y'all.